Hello and welcome to this video on section 1.2 of the book. So last time we introduced the idea of an election and set up the terminology and notation that we would need, in particular the idea of a preference ballot and the preference table. So the rest of the chapter is about different methods of voting, how the methods work, and what kinds of things about them are fair and what kinds of things about them are unfair. So section 1.2 introduces the simplest method of voting, the simplest method of determining an outcome of an election, and that method is the plurality method. And the plurality method works essentially how you normally think of elections working. The person who wins is the person who gets the most first place votes. So it's that simple, right? You just count how many first place votes each person got, and whoever got the most wins. So this is a winner-only election setup here. You can rank the candidates if you want to, but all that matters is who got the most first-place votes. And of course, most political elections in the U.S. are decided this way, although it's worth noting, and we will note this later, other democratic countries use other methods sometimes. So just for example, here's the math club election example that we did last time. Here's the preference table. So again, you need to be comfortable with what this is saying. This first column is saying that 14 people turned in ballots that look like this. 14 people said they want A first, B second, C third, and D fourth. So they liked A the best and D the least. 10 people liked C the best, B second best, D third best, and A fourth best, etc. So in this preference table, A gets the most first place votes, so A wins. That's it. So all you have to do is look at the first row, and you count that A has 14 first place votes, C has 11, right, 10 here and 1 from there. So you have to make sure you scan across all the entries in the row. But so A has 14 to C's 11 to D's 8 to B's 4. So A wins. So here's a more relevant example. This is the election results for the Maine governorship in 2010. So it looks like Paul LePage wins. So he got 218,000 votes, which is more than anybody else. And in a political election like this, people don't turn in ranked ballots. They just choose their first place person and don't choose anybody else. So by getting 218,000 votes, he got 218,000 first place votes. So according to the plurality method, he won. Okay, so that's the method. Real simple, right? Just however first many place votes you get, count them, see who wins. There are many drawbacks to this kind of thing, to this voting method, and we're just going to march through several of them now. And so here's one potential drawback. You may or may not like this, but most people consider this a detriment. When you have more than 2 candidates, it's possible for somebody to win without getting a majority of the vote. So it's possible to win without getting 50% or more of the first place votes. And in this example we just did, that happened, right? Paul LePage only won 38% of the votes, and yet he still wins. So without being the favorite of a majority of voters, you can still win. So here's a quote from Portland, Maine's newspaper in November of 2010. The election of LePage with 38% of the vote means Maine's next governor won't take office with the support of the majority of voters, a situation that has occurred in 6 of the last 7 gubernatorial elections. Some people say it's time to reform the system so our next governor can better represent the consensus of the voters. Right, so people generally don't like this. If you just time after time keep getting governors who don't even get a majority of the voter support, people see that as a problem. So another drawback is the idea of insincerity. And I should say here, insincere in this context is not meant to be a put down. It's not meant to imply a character flaw or something in the voter. It's simply a technical term. So insincere voter here is a technical term that means a voter who doesn't vote for the candidate that he or she really wants. So let's go back to this table here. So suppose that before the election starts, you really, really like Kevin Scott, right? That's your guy. But based on recent polling, you're very aware that Kevin Scott is coming in last right now. you're pretty sure he's going to fail, right? So what you might say to yourself is this: man, I really like that Kevin Scott guy. He stands for me, but according to the most recent poll, he's way behind. A vote for him is a waste. The most recent polls show a close race between two other people, so maybe I'll vote for one of them, right? So a person who reasons this way is called an insincere voter because they're not voting for the person they really want, right? And so this, of course, is a problem with the plurality method because the plurality method doesn't give you a way of distinguishing any sort of ranking, right? You just have to vote for somebody and that's it. Yeah, so the method lends itself to insincere voters and also people who just don't even vote at all, right? Because you could also imagine this person saying, I really like Kevin Scott, but he's going to lose, so I'm not going to vote, right? I would just stay home. So it leads to insincerity and indifference and inaction sometimes, right? And of course, in this country, we see this all too well. You can make a pretty good argument that using this method has led to the entrenched two-party system that often gives people little real choice, because you hear this all the time, right? Why would I vote for the third-party candidate? It's just a waste. Why would I show up and waste my vote? So I either won't show up or I'll just choose the Republican or Democrat that offends me the least and vote for them. So that's a drawback of the plurality method, insincerity. To introduce the next drawback, we need another technical term, and the term is a Condorcet candidate. It's named for the mathematician Condorcet, who thought about voting in the 1800s or 1700s, something like that. So a Condorcet candidate is a candidate who is preferred by a majority of the voters when the candidate is compared head-to-head with any other candidate. So what that means is you take the candidate you're interested in and just compare him one-on-one to everybody else. So compare candidate A to B, compare candidate A to C, etc. If he wins all those head-to-head matchups, then he's a Condorcet candidate. And so if your election has one of these guys, it's very likely that this candidate actually represents the voice of the voters better than anybody else because he wins head-to-head compared to anybody else. So morally speaking, in a perfect world, Condorcet candidates should win an election, right? If they represent the people the best, I suppose they should win. But using the plurality method, you'll encounter this all the time. Condorcet candidates lose. Not always, but sometimes. So here's an example. 5 candidates, F, H, O, R, and S, right? Here are the results of the election. So if you're going to use the plurality method to declare a winner, you just look at first place votes, right? R gets 49 of them, H gets 48 of them, F gets 3 of them, right? So R is the winner. But is that really a fair winner? Is that really the best outcome to the election? I would argue no, because H, you'll notice, is a Condorcet candidate. So if you compare H to R head-to-head, there are 49 people that prefer R over H, right? These 49 people like R better than H. But these 48 people here like H better than R, right? They ranked H first and R last. And these 3 people here also like H better than R, right? They rank H second and R last again. So there are 51 people who like H better than R. And in fact, if you compare H to any other candidate, you'll see that he wins head-to-head. So for example, 49 people prefer H over F. 48 people prefer H to F, and then 3 people prefer F over H, right? So there's a bunch of people that like H as composed to F, and then H pretty clearly wins when compared to everybody else. Everybody likes H better than S. Everybody likes H better than O. Yeah, so that's all the cases there. So, in other words, all this stuff is true here. In a head-to-head comparison between H and F, for example, 97 people sorry, this is a typo. 97 people prefer H over F, and 3 people prefer F over H. Sorry, those R should be H's. So anyway, so H is a Condorcet candidate, so he should win, morally speaking. So just to wrap all this up, the method itself is very simple. So if you want to talk about pros and cons of using the plurality method, the pro is clear. It's a very simple method, right? Number of first place votes, Right, if you have more first place votes than anybody else, you win, right? Simple. There are many drawbacks. So here are a few of them that we discussed. You can win without winning a majority of the votes, or even really coming close to winning a majority. So there have been votes in this country where one candidate only wins like a quarter of the votes. But because there are so many candidates, that candidate still wins, right? So you can not even come close to winning a majority and still win. You get a lot of insincere voting. You get a lot of indifference. So both of these things are consequences of thinking that your vote is a waste, that your voice actually isn't being heard. In this particular country, third-party candidates stand very little chance of winning. And you can make an argument that that's a consequence of using the plurality method. And lastly, Condorcet candidates can lose, right? Condorcet candidates are good, so they probably should win, but they often lose in this method. So that's all I had to say about the plurality method.